It is 2 days before Thanksgiving as I'm recording this, and there is a lot to be thankful for. One is just how few lawmakers, Democrats or Republicans, have the ability to come out publicly and even say they are with Dade Phelan for his reelection as Speaker. And also, we're very thankful that there are some people who promised in 2016 to leave the country or the state of Texas if Donald Trump was reelected or was originally elected, and they failed to follow through. But this election, some of them seem to actually be holding themselves accountable and following through in departing. And we actually have a media interview with one of those individuals in Tarrant County who has decided to leave Texas. We're going to break down what she had to say. Let's get to the show. Eight years ago, a lot of people posted on social media and said, if Donald Trump is elected president, I will be fleeing the country. I will be leaving the state of Texas. And then they didn't do it. They said they would, and they didn't do it. But this time around, some people seem to be following through. Now, I've talked about this on the Luke Macias show. There is a balkanization going on as red states become more red and blue states become more blue. One of the things that happened in November is that the blue states became more red and the red states became more red. Now, there's still plenty of Democrats in California, so if you want to flee to that state or Colorado, it is likely that that state will remain blue for the time being. But the left took a serious hit on election night as they saw Americans across the country say, we are more likely to be open to the direction that the Republican Party is leading us, and specifically the direction that Donald Trump has taken the Republican Party. So what you're now seeing is that some people are actually holding true to their commitment. They're saying, I'm out of here. And one of those individuals is a resident in Tarrant County. Now, this is not just any resident. She actually ran for Congress. She's been a local Democrat activist in the largest red county in America, Tarrant County. And Tarrant County, actually, even this election, Colin Allred barely won that county, but Donald Trump won the county by 6 percentage points. Every single countywide official in that county is a Republican, and they are well positioned to maintain the county judge and the district attorney and all the various positions that are very, very important moving into 2026. And while Republicans are gearing up for a very big election in 2 years, there are some local Democrats, including this woman that I'm about to go to a couple clips of, who has decided to leave and to go to Europe. Now, I just want to reiterate the importance of governing red. Every single time we advance conservative policies, we take a number of people and they decide to leave. Local Tarrant County GOP Chair Beau French has said one of his missions is to make Tarrant County inhospitable to the left. It's just saying that if you're somebody who wants to mutilate the genitals of children, if you're somebody who wants to take all the guns from your neighbors, if you're somebody who wants to censor free speech for those in your community, then you shouldn't feel welcome and at home. Doesn't mean you don't have the right to live there, the right to property, the right to say what you think. But it's okay that you don't really feel comfortable. And when you create that environment, good things happen. So let's go to this interview of this woman who has decided to depart Tarrant County and see what she has to say. Let's go to this clip.
Let's get into this because Jana, I've been doing politics for years now. I've always heard people threaten they're going to leave the country. I'm leaving if so-and-so gets elected. Yeah. I've never actually met someone who's going to leave. And so I was flipping through Facebook the other night. This is probably post number 9 for you, or day 4 or 5. And I'm like, wow, Jana's serious about this? And you were like, the realtor's coming over and all this other stuff. I'm going to miss my garden out back.
It's a nice garden, too.
Thank you.
You did a lot of work on that.
Well, you put a lot of work into the house here in Fort Worth. It's for sale, by the way.
Yes.
But wow, you're really going to do this?
I'm really going to
because of Trump's election?
Yes, absolutely.
So, just pointing out, Jana Sanchez, very dedicated. She's saying, yeah, I'm leaving. Now, we're going to get into it, and Jason Whiteley is going to do a great job kind of asking her a follow-up question. Let's go to this second clip.
What would you say to Trump supporters here who would cheer this move and say, don't let the door hit you on the way out? We're glad to see you go, and we wish you'd take everybody who's like-minded with you.
I mean, they're entitled to their point of view. You know, they're clearly in charge now, and it's their country.
They are clearly in charge now. It's their country. Now, here's the reality. If you think everything is fixed now that the general election has concluded, then I'm sorry, you're completely wrong. But you have to understand that the left's point of view right now is that we're in charge. The question is whether Republicans are actually going to govern like they're in charge. When the Democrats are given the power, they actually advance their priorities. And the battle we're going to shift to in a little bit in this conversation is going to be the battle for Speaker of the Texas House, because that's a conversation about whether Republicans are in charge. I want you to think about what she's saying when we move to our conversation about Jared Patterson's interview with Jack Fink with CBS 11. Understand that there are Republicans in our own camp who don't want to shift to start acting like Republicans are in charge. Okay? While Democrats are saying, I'm leaving because they're in charge, it's their country. It is important that we actually understand what demoralizes Democrats, okay? And that we act upon it. In fact, I want to shift before we go to the third clip of Jana and actually bring in a CNN clip, because I want to explain to you how demoralized Democrats are as we proceed in this conversation. So let's go to this clip from CNN.
But Democrats were also very opposed to Trump's picks and his presidency overall in 2017 coming in. Where are they now?
I think one word to describe Democrats now, it's just they're exhausted. They're tired. You know, it's very hard being in the opposition. Donald Trump wears out his opponents, and I think they've done that here. So Democrats, Trump's win motivates me in what way to do things? Just 44% say to oppose Donald Trump. The majority, the 56%, either 46%, it doesn't motivate me at all, which I think is really the exhaustion pick, right? This is the plurality. Or 10% say it actually motivates them to support Donald Trump. Together, these numbers get 56%, far higher than the 44% who say oppose Donald Trump. The bottom line is this: Republicans very motivated by Donald Trump's win, and compared to 8 years ago, Democrats just really, really tired. They have just given up. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah,
Trump gets sworn
November
in.
2024. I think a lot of people are exhausted after the election.
I think a lot of people are exhausted. But
Do you understand that Democrats are depressed about Republican victories and they want to fight us less? And so, again, I'm only setting the table for the conversation we're going to have after one other clip from Jana Sanchez as we go into the conversation that Jared Patterson had in his interview with Jack Fink. So let's go to this final clip of Jana, and really why I want to show this clip, and I want you all to hear it, is just to point out just how much these people are having to rid themselves of the Texas culture. Honestly, it almost comes from like a scene in Babylon Bee. Let's go to the final clip of Jana.
What else have you already done to get ready for that? You've had the realtor come by, you're doing repairs at the house,
Yeah.
the realtor's photographers come by. What other steps have you, concrete steps have you done?
So
to leave?
I'm selling my gun. I put that on the market, and I have found a buyer who's transferring the money today, and I'm going to meet her and hand over the gun, because you can't take a gun to Holland.
You can't take a gun to Holland. Yes, Jana, you can't take a gun to Holland. It's really remarkable to me, the lack of self-awareness from a leftist here who's saying, well, one of the first things I have to do is give up the gun that I own. And you would think, we sometimes mistake our enemy and think that everyone on the left has no guns in their home and has blue hair and in no way relates to the Texas spirit. The truth is, when you're here, you just start acting and living a little more Texan. And even Jana, somebody who's fleeing not only Texas, but the country. Jana is not going to Colorado. Jana is not going to California. Jana is going to Europe. She's leaving. She's going to Holland.
News and analysis on what's happening in Texas. End your day with daily headlines from Texas Scorecard. Every day at 5 p.m., join me, Brandon Waltons, as we recap the biggest stories of the day and talk about why they matter to you. From the state capitol to town hall, there's no shortage of events happening. Keep up with it all. Watch and subscribe to Daily Headlines from Texas Scorecard.
And so I only point this out because I have said this. Texas benefits when Californians move here because they are patriots by and large that come. And we benefit when we pass policy and enact reforms that make things less hospitable to Democrats. And that's a perfect segue into Jared Patterson's conversation with Jack Fink at CBS 11. Now, I will say before I start this, that Representative Mitch Little took to Twitter after this conversation came out and challenged Jared Patterson to a debate. He said, look, Jared, you've been willing to, I'm summarizing what he said because I don't have it right in front of me, but essentially, you're willing to have these conversations in public, on the media. Let's have a debate. Mark Davis can host it. Jason Whiteley can host it. Wherever. You pick the venue. Let's have a conversation. And so far, I've not seen Jared Patterson reply to that at all. I don't expect him to because Jared cannot go and actually debate this with the other side presenting information. Okay. He can go to a one-sided, one-on-one interview. And that's not to detract from Jack Fink. I actually think Jack has done a fairly great job reporting. I've known Jack for a while. Jack has done a lot of these interviews, and he doesn't shy away from pushing in on some of these positions. Okay. And so Jack being willing to go in and ask these things is very helpful. With that being said, I want you to put all the context to the CNN interview where they literally are saying how demoralized Democrats are. This Democrat who's fleeing Texas because of the victories Republicans have had. And now let's look at what one of the top cardinals of Dade Phelan is saying when pressed on House leadership. Let's go to this conversation. It's a 5-minute conversation. I'm going to stop it a couple times so we can break down what's being said. Let's go to the conversation.
Where are you on backing either Speaker Phelan or Representative Cook?
Yeah, look, I think Speaker Phelan's going to be the speaker next session, and I'm fully supportive of that. You know, there's been a lot made, and you start to hear a lot of people digging into the weeds on House processes, on how this committee's structured or how these House rules are structured. Nobody ever talked to me about that when I was at the door knocking doors or talking to voters or going to events in my district. Nobody talks about the minutia of House rules. Do you know why they're talking about it? They're talking about it because we're coming off of the two most conservative sessions in the history of the state of Texas. We have passed legacy conservative reforms that Republicans only dreamed of about 6 years ago. We passed a ban of elective abortions in Texas, saving 50,000 babies in Texas every single month. We've passed constitutional carry. For the first time since Reconstruction, you don't have to ask the government's permission to keep and bear arms. The largest border security investment of any state in the history of the United States, the largest investment in property tax relief of any state in the history of the United States. You look at election integrity, the strongest election integrity bills in the history of the United States and certainly of the state of Texas. We have passed so many legacy conservative wins, and that's not even to mention what we did to protect kids last session from explicit drag shows, from dirty books in schools, pornographic websites, banning gender modification for minors, surgeries and drugs, banning men from competing against women in girls' sports. We have passed so many red meat, strong legacy conservative wins that now we're debating minutia of House rules that, quite frankly, the people that I represent don't care about.
So let's break down what Jared just said there. First of all, he made a statement, and this has been the Mike Toomey, Rick Perry, Jared Patterson, Dade Phelan tactic. Dade's going to be speaker. Now, they don't know how. They don't know how he has the votes. He only has 8 or 9 people basically saying they're going to vote for him that are Republicans. The Democrats haven't even said what they are doing. We know they are meeting to discuss what they're going to do at some point. So who knows what they're going to come up with. But they're just going to say Dade Phelan's going to be speaker. That's their only hope, is that they basically speak his speakership into existence because they don't have the votes right now. Could they get the votes? Yes. And their hope is they just kind of gaslight their colleagues into just saying, hey, well, he has the votes, I might as well vote for him. He doesn't have the votes, and they know that his chance of being speaker is diminishing by the day. So that's how he starts out. Then he says, we're getting bogged down in all this minutia. What's the minutia he's talking about? Banning Democrat chairs, speeding up the process, making sure that Republican priorities actually get voted on. Like when the Republican Party says we want to ban Chinese nationals from purchasing Texas land, that gets voted on instead of getting killed in the State Affairs Committee without ever even having a chance to get to the Calendars Committee and get on the floor for a vote. I've talked about this before, but there is an article written last June, 48 conservative policies that died in the Texas House. I'm not going to go through it all because so many of you, thousands of you, are regular weekly listeners to this podcast. So I really do try to not just say the same things to you over and over again. If you just happen to be listening to this particular episode, you can go back and see the long list of conservative policies that died. But he says, hey, we're only caring about process because we've done so many good things. And he goes through that long list of good things. The process he's talking about is eliminating Democrat chairs, speeding up the process to where the Texas House isn't killing literally 50, 60, 70 very conservative policies that the Senate passed. The 10 Commandments getting back into classrooms never got voted on, right? The Texas House killed it. Long list of other things. He's talking about the Democrat parliamentarian who bogs down a lot of the process. That is a kind of process minutia that he says none of his voters care about. And it's true that the only reason the voters care about those issues is because the policy's dying. He's acting like 15 of his Republican colleagues weren't defeated in their primary, many of whom even were supported by Governor Greg Abbott and the school choice groups. They still lost because they were wrong, not only in their impeachment of Ken Paxton, but in supporting a House leadership that killed so many of these conservative bills. Let's go to the next question he's asked.
But the grassroots in the Texas GOP does, and the chair of the Texas GOP is making this a big issue. And where are you on the issue of no Democratic committee chairs? Because that's a very big issue, at least with the Republican grassroots.
Yeah, look, and I understand why it's an issue, and it's an issue because we've passed so many red meat items in the last two sessions. The grifters who go out there and make money off of primary races have to drum up everybody on an issue so that they can continue to make money in the primaries. I mean, that's honestly what this is about. I think people are surprised to learn that the Texas Senate has had at least one, if not more, Democrat chairmen of committees every single session that a Republican has held the lieutenant governorship and been president of the Senate. Now, I understand the lieutenant governor said that he's not going to have them next session because Senator Whitmire retired. And so, because of the retirements that they've had, they're not going to have Democrat chairs. Look, I don't go to Austin and love the fact that Democrats have committee chairmanships. That's not something that I've fought for to go down to Austin to say, hey, here, you have this committee chairmanship. But I would defy anyone to tell me what red meat conservative bill that a Democrat committee chair killed last session. When I ask people that in my district, they can't name one. Do you know why? Because there isn't one. Democrats typically chair committees that red meat stuff doesn't go through. They typically chair committees that aren't as much R versus D. They chair committees that are more urban versus rural. So it may be a transportation committee or a committee on water, where if I'm an East Texas hardcore Republican, I would have rather have had Democrat Tracy King be the chair of the water committee than Republican Jared Patterson from Frisco, Texas. You know why? Because Jared Patterson, Republican from Frisco, Texas, is going to go out to East Texas and take all that water and give it to my people here in Denton County, where we've got over 1 million residents and we need their water. But Democrat Tracy King from Uvalde, he's going to be a little bit more cautious on that because he's a rural member as chair of the water committee. So this is a dynamic issue. I think that something that people don't recognize is the fact that for us to pass a constitutional amendment, it takes 100 votes in the House. We don't have 100 votes. We don't have 100 Republicans. We have 88 Republicans coming in this next session, and that's more than we've had in any other session that I've served in the Texas House. So if we want to be able to work across the aisle and get Democrats to come over and vote with us on constitutional amendments on things like property tax reform and expanding the homestead exemption, if we need their help to pass these constitutional amendments, then they're going to expect a say in something along the way. And so I don't like that we have Democrat chairs, but I understand why we have Democrat chairs. And it's because in the Texas House, we work very well together to accomplish the agenda of the majority, as I've laid out, the two most conservative sessions in history, but while also respecting the minority rights.
State Representative Jared Patterson of Frisco, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I wanted to play the whole clip because I think that sometimes it's so easy to just take 12 seconds of what Jared says and piece it, pull it apart and criticize it. So I think it's better to take the full kind of 2.5 minute answer he has here on Democrat chairs and let him explain the whole thing. And now let's actually dissect it piece by piece. So let's break down a couple things he said. First of all, he talks about the fact that, well, the only reason the Dem chair issue is an issue is because we've done so much red meat for the base that they need to fabricate this issue. Really funny position. I also like the fact that he's revealing that he thinks of conservative policy the same way that the left media thinks of it. And this is true about House leadership. When they pass many of these conservative bills, they think of it as like, this is the red meat that these guys need. They're basically trying to do a calculation in their head. Okay, if we pass these 12 items and we kill these 50, is that enough red meat for these guys to eat on for a couple of years? They keep us all in power, and then we figure out how much more red meat to feed them, keep them happy. That is their mentality each session. And that has been kind of reiterated by a number of people. If you didn't listen to my conversation with J.M. Lozano, you should go back and listen to it. This is a chairman under Dade Phelan who explains in depth why he has left not only Dade, but just this entire culture that's broken and why he's fighting for a new way. But this is how they think. What's the bare minimum we can do to just give them enough? That way these people are happy. He also talks about the fact that, well, nobody talks about the fact that the Senate has had a Democrat chairman every session, which is really funny. One Democrat chairman versus 40% of the chairs being given to Democrats, maybe slight difference. Oh, by the way, Dan Patrick got rid of his Democrat chair and has said they're never going to have another Democrat chair. He also announced this 2 years ago, where he said, hey, we have one Democrat chair left. He's on the Criminal Justice Committee. He has very limited authority and scope, and I think Republican voters generally have not seen him abuse that authority. I will tell you when he leaves, he will be replaced by a Republican, and that's what we will go to. That's actually a good thing to hear from the lieutenant governor versus the speaker who's saying, I'm never backing away from all these Democrats that I've empowered. Oh, by the way, what we also know, because Tom Oliverson talked about this, not only in his interview with me, which you can go back and listen to, Tom Oliverson, Luke Macias show, go back and sit there. When Tom Oliverson announced his race for speaker on this show, he shared a story specifically about the fact that when he passed the ban on sex change surgeries, local bills that he was working on died in Democrat committees. It's not even just the conservative policy that goes through them, but what will happen is when actual fights on policy are happening on the House floor and Republicans are trying to decide how they're going to vote on an amendment or on a bill, Democrats will come to them and tell them, hey, if you're wrong on this issue, those two bills in my committee that you're working on, that one of your county judges is working with you on, they're dead unless you vote with the Democrat caucus here. They bully these members constantly. And it's now not just the 10 most conservative members in the House that are telling you this, or the 5 or the 2 or the 3. It's a broad array of Republicans in the caucus that are saying Democrats have abused this authority time and time again and use it to bully Republican members into submission. We know this. That's also where he starts to say, well, some Republican priorities didn't die in Democrat committees. Well, first of all, Jared, a lot of Republican priorities died in Republican-chaired committees, just to get that out of the way. So he's not saying Republican priorities didn't die in the Texas House. You want to know why? Because the Texas Senate passed them and the Texas House killed them. So let's put that one aside. Oh, by the way, a lot of conservative policy that did die in the Texas House dies because of the leverage that is handed to Democrats, not only in the deals that get cut, but all the chairmanships that get given. And a lot of policy passes the House floor with a majority of Democrats and a minority of Republicans. And those bills, if you look at them, often are originated in Democrat committees. Because what Democrats do is they come up with novel ideas that say, hey, we're going to come up with this bill that is opposed by 90% of Republicans. We're going to make sure to write it in such a way that it goes to Joe Moody's committee, who's a Democrat chair from El Paso. And then it's going to come out of his committee and come to the floor, where over 60 Republicans are going to vote no against the bill of the 88. But we'll get 15 or 20 of them to vote with all the Democrats. We'll pass the bill. Now, luckily, when that bill goes to the Senate, it dies. But it takes up a day of floor debate and also gives the Democrats a clear path to having now more leverage. All of a sudden, at the end of the session, when the Senate is trying to get some good conservative policy out of the House will say, well, how about this? We'll pass some of these Republican bills as long as you pass those 5 or 6 bills that are sitting in this committee. Oh, by the way, most of them are Democrat bills. Do you understand all the problems that come with sharing all this power with Democrats and then giving them that clear path to leverage? You're just handing leverage to them. By the way, we also learn in his explanation that he hates East Texas. Okay, so if you're East Texas, you want Jared Patterson out of House leadership. I mean, he's literally like, if I have that water committee, I'm sucking East Texas dry. And so, I mean, if you are an East Texas voter, you should be calling your state representative like tomorrow and being like, do not vote for Dade. He likes Jared Patterson, and that guy's coming for all of our water. So Jared should never be let anywhere near water policy because he just wants to completely pillage East Texas to a desert. I appreciate Jared's clarity on that issue. And I love what he says at the end, which is, I don't like that we have Democrat chairs. And in that, we will conclude that, Jared, I agree with you. I don't like it either. The difference being, I don't like it, and I'm siding with 90% of Republicans who also don't like it and think we need to move on. And a majority of your Republican colleagues who have said, not only do they not like it, they're not voting for a speaker who's going to keep it in place. He gives this argument that I've dissected several times on this program, but I'll do it one more time. He says, we need 100 votes to pass a constitutional amendment. And so that's why we need these Democrat chairs. We can't rewrite our Constitution without the Democrats. Here's the thing, though. The Senate rewrites the Constitution with constitutional amendments all the time. Every constitutional amendment that passes the House has to pass the Senate. And guess what? All those Democrat senators that aren't chairmen in the Texas Senate vote for those constitutional amendments. Because guess what? The vast majority of those constitutional amendments are issues that you wouldn't ever vote against. It's obviously good policy. And that's why they pass. They pass in the Senate, they pass in the House. And these guys have no argument for why the Senate is able to pass these constitutional amendments, even though in the past they've only had one Democrat chair, and now they have no Democrat chairs. So with that, you have to understand that while Jared can sit down and take 2 questions on House leadership and give 2 to 2.5 minute answers to Jack Fink, he will not, and I'm just going to predict this, he will not accept Mitch Little's debate offer and go on and have a conversation with his neighbor and colleague in Denton County. I do not think it will happen. I think Jared is far too scared to get up and actually articulate his position when he can get pushback and get questions that then have to further defend that position. So I do not think we will see that, but I'm grateful that Mitch has gone out and offered to participate in that. That's the kind of thing that we need to bring the Republican Party unity, which is what I've been saying. If you want the Republican Party united, we have to stop cutting deal with Democrats and we have to start governing together. And if we want more Janice Sanchez's to leave the state of Texas, then we better get to work. May God bless you, and may God bless the great state of Texas. Happy Thanksgiving.